Good afternoon. It's great to be back. Here we are once again for another coffee break, and I've got my my travel cup finally. I can't adult today. Oh well. But it keeps the beverage warm. Really nice. Wait for some more folks to arrive here. It's 3 p.m. thereabouts on June 11th, 2020. Well, is anybody going to join us today? Yay, there's C. How you doing, Mr. C? Mr. C. And, oh, I recognize the face, but I'm not sure what I can remember the name. Good afternoon to another edition of Coffee Break Live Update, June 11th, 2020. And hello, C, hello, Adele, and here we go. It's amazing how fast things are moving. Amazing. This is a continuation of Tuesday afternoon and the sharing I had then regarding digital reality versus reality. There we go. I think that pretty much sums it up. Organic soul and consciousness and spiritual awareness versus the allure of, I don't know what you would call it. I kind of call it the seduction of the promise of digital immortality. Okay, so before we get into that, there are a couple of things I want to discuss regarding the astrology of the times, which are reflecting some of these issues. Not so much want to spend time on the things I did on Tuesday. I'd be just repeating myself, such as the Black Lives Matter, the injustices in racial relations, and the bad policing going on, not just in the U.S., elsewhere as well. But let's start off with a review of astrological events, astro events as I like to call them, and my friend Jim Buss calls them. To summarize, we're only 7 days away from Mercury going retrograde, so I'm going to run down a little checklist. The checklist is, have you backed up your data? Have you scheduled things so that you're not signing contracts, agreements, or making any promises that have long-reaching effects or consequences after the 18th of June and for the next 3 weeks? We're in the shadow period now, but it's more critical going into the actual cycle. Now, Mercury's in Cancer this time, so maybe the issues won't be as pronounced having to do with technology, but they certainly can play havoc with our emotional intelligence because, you know, raw emotion, raw feeling is the domain of Cancer as a sign, as an archetype. So I think it's important to recognize that some days you may be a little out of depth and wanting to understand what kind of emotions you're experiencing, what kind of feelings you're having, how sometimes you'll blow hot and cold, perhaps, around certain issues or certain choices or decisions you think you might have to make. Better to wait until you're out of the emotional chaos or tumble dryer effect of this retrograde. So we're looking at this point in time, sometime toward the end of the first week in July, which is around the time of another eclipse, on the 5th of July, by the way. And so these are two major ones coming up. One in Cancer, one in Capricorn, and so the one on the shortly after the 18th, when Mercury goes retrograde, is the 23rd of June, when we have the eclipse happening on the world axis, on 0 degrees of Cancer. So I'm going to try to call up that chart real quick. Where is it? Spring equinox, no. Summer equinox. Well, I'll just advance the chart because it is a potent one. The world axis degree is very, very powerful kind of time. So this is on the 22nd, and we have a new moon in 0 degrees Cancer. And that will be quite pronounced with anybody who's got anything in their chart from 0 degrees Libra, Aries, or Capricorn as well. So this is kind of a reckoning point, a starting point in a deeper understanding about the nature of how we feel about what's going on. And also about what kind of emotional direction or action we'll want to feel like taking around any of these issues. So, you know, that are up right now, particularly around issues of structure, whether it be a home, politics, economics, and finance, and basically the bottom line one, security. If there's one thing that Cancerians and Capricorns are very focused upon is structure and security. So it'll be important to recognize that this kind of place this kind of experience, this kind of lunation will hit you right where you live, at home, inside of yourself. And you can say, all right, let's treat this as a new starting point for the next 12 months. Let's treat this as something of a disembarkation point, like casting off the lines on a ship and making ready to go to sea, that kind of thing. Especially good metaphor considering it's a water sign anyway, and cardinal water. The next one happening after that, only the next day, is Neptune, another big water giant, turning retrograde for the next 6 months, ostensibly. Neptune turns retrograde at 20 degrees of Pisces. Again, anybody who's got anything sensitive in their chart, 20 degrees Pisces, Virgo, Aquarius, or Leo, it could be an interesting time. I would say it's a spiritual Rubicon. And also, you know, that's the higher octave of this, the spiritual Rubicon. What does that mean? It's coming to terms with our organic relationship with the invisible realms, other dimensions, spirit, nature spirits, fairies and elves and all that kind of stuff. And higher intelligences that govern the natural world, known as devas, or not, excuse me, devas. I mispronounced it. It's D-E-V-A, not D-I-V-A. Good afternoon, Lou. Good afternoon, Joelle. And so it's really a critical time, I think, of soul searching this next 6 months for how are we going to break the addictions that we have, the toxic addictions that we have to technology, to life as we have known it up till this point, addictions regarding any emotional addictions or any kind of feelings of separation from divine sources or from others. And so it's really important to take this time over the next 6 months to maybe write, journal, meditate. All of you have been doing that in the lockdown, I'm sure. But this is also going to be a time of great possible disinformation and misinformation or misconstruing of data and information. Mainly because it kicks off under a Mercury retrograde in a water sign, and it's going to carry forward into the better part of the autumn months. So Neptune in Pisces is going to be a very interesting one this time around, indeed. So I think that this will be an excellent time for sorting out where your internal information and intel needs upgrading, needs changing regarding things of compassion, things around the issues of compassion or higher dimensional relating. And higher dimensional relating means, relating to your spirit, relating to your concept or your personal relationship with the idea that you are a fractal of the divine, and therefore are we going to act like it? We're going to make a choice in favor of that? Yes, exactly. Well, get into the garden, get into nature. I mean, it doesn't have to be a garden necessarily. You could just get out in the woods. You could spend time by a wild creek or a river or a lake. Any kind of oasis of nature that you can expose yourself to. The advantage of gardening, obviously, whether it's flower gardening or vegetable gardening, is you get your hands in the soil and you absorb the good stuff from the microbiomes in the soil, which actually improve your immunity, your immune system. So nature in any category, or just merely interfacing it by visual context, is actually elevating. It's very elevating. Enjoying the weather, no matter what it is. Today it's windy, wild, and changeable, and it's very, very crazy at times. So I went out walking in it, so I'm wind blown and everything, and you know what? It felt like getting a bath, an air bath from nature to wipe away all the cobwebs and all of the garbage of the last few days around here. It's just been heavy, low overcast, heavy rain. It's just a heaviness in the air. We are in a very kind of heavy weather time in a lot of, a lot of sense of the word. But I'm going to, my friend Jim Buss has another name for it, the cycle we're in at the moment. Could you bear with me a moment? I didn't call this up when I wanted it to. And it's called, heavy fortnight. A heavy fortnight, which began approximately 5 days ago. This is the build up to the eclipse on the 22nd. So there are a lot of points being activated at subtle levels, mostly, asteroids involved, fixed stars. I'm not going to name all the players because it would bore you to death. But it's basically a very strong time for these examinations before the kickoff of the eclipse, before Neptune turns around, and certainly before the big event at the end of the month on the 28th when Mars goes into Aries, fiery, warlike at times, Aries. So it's a kind of kickoff for the second half of the year. We're going through that initiation now to what's coming up at the end of the month, and that end of the month is the initiation for the next 6 months, right in the beginning of January, middle of January, when Uranus turns around at approximately 5 degrees Taurus, where it almost was last year on the same date, January 12th this year, when it went direct in Taurus on the same day that the Pluto-Saturn conjunction happened. It's going to revisit that point and go direct again 1 year and 1 day in 2021. So that sets off a whole other series of things. This is going to be decade long. All right, so the reasons for this are multifarious and multidimensional. And I'm going to get into that in a second. So again, with a review, the Mercury Retrograde, back up your data, don't sign any serious contracts or promises, don't buy any cars, don't buy any electronic gear, the usual suspects, as it were, and take time out to reflect, journal, and check in with your emotional body more often than you probably need to, or think that you need to, because that's going to be an important arbiter to get through the next 3 weeks and then get past that eclipse on July 5th. A preview of that is exciting. That's the full moon, one at 13 degrees of Cancer Capricorn, the moon at 13 Capricorn, which is, that's going to be a biggie. That's going to be resonating through the balance of the year with Pluto and Jupiter and Pallas Athena all in Capricorn and all conjunct at the same time. So Pluto and Jupiter have their second meeting at the end of June, end of this month, June 30th, when they are both retrograde and conjunct at 23 Capricorn. So that again triggers the energy of the January 12th meeting between Saturn and Pluto as well. And we also then have Gemini at the 29th degree, North Node in Gemini at the 29th degree of Gemini, and that is definitely a strong, powerful sort of insertion of holographic divine intention coming into the Earth plane. So that's the astrology. That's out of the way now. We'll just go on to the very next thing, which is to pick up the ball from Tuesday. As I'm getting deeper into this new book, or rather, it is a brand new book, The Struggle for a Human Future, one of the things that really stands out is the fact that what we are being faced with is a very big mirror being put up to humanity's consciousness and saying, can you see where you're so easily addicted to the material perspective and the material way of solving things. Oh, hello, Shalom and Jill. Who else has joined the party? Brenda, Lori, Jacomina, thank you. And this choice point may not sound, it may sound a bit paranoid or histrionic. I don't think so. I think that basically we cannot have a healthy relationship with technology until we really visit the facts of what the electrification of the air through wireless technologies has been doing to us since the 1920s, and what we are doing to ourselves by virtue of our interface with the machine inhuman range of expression, because it is that. We have, in a way, elevated our tech to the point where we don't feel comfortable without it. Majority of people don't. And we think, well, what would happen now with our economy if we all had to work back in the real world? What would happen to our entertainment industry if we all of a sudden didn't have streaming Netflix? What would happen to our connection with friends far and wide if we didn't have smartphones and the internet? We don't realize, just at a pure physics standpoint, how fragile this network is, because all it would take would be one good solar storm to knock out a good portion of the grid worldwide. Now, the reason this whole thing is in a way a danger is because it does rob us of our humanity, and it robs us of our interface with the natural world. I'm going to come back to that theme over and over again. You are a body, you are a soul, you are an etheric body that is the interface between the soul and the body, physical body, and your relationship in your life is derived from the natural world around you and from the cosmic energies coming in and from within yourself, from the divine spark within. That is being supplanted. There is an agenda or an ideology that believes that that is not good enough, that true eternal life lies in emerging with machines. And the whole Elon Musk, Ray Kurzweil argument, it doesn't hold up. In fact, it sounds more insane every day it goes by. And so when an entrepreneur and a real mover and shaker and influence in the world of economics and science, such as Elon Musk says, the only way that we can continue as a species is if we merge with the machines. It sounds insane, and Ray Kurzweil is the same way. I'm not picking on them as people, but there's a larger force behind that. There's a larger influence behind that that is non-human, that is interpolating with human consciousness, with people who are open to that perspective. And they are then turning their power and their resources to convincing, not just trying to convince the rest of the world this is the only way to go to solve the problems of the planet, is to turn the planet into a smart planet. Excuse me, but it is already a smart planet. It is an intelligent life form. And if we keep treating it as a resource, even existentially, we are going to be in for a very rough ride as a species. And we've been making it rough not only on ourselves for the last 140 years, it's been rough on other species as well. Speaking specifically to the fact that in natural form, the electromagnetic field of nature is very, very low level and very subtle, and connects our etheric signaling within the etheric body to the central nervous system and the brain. It connects us to nature. If we start having implants in our eyes with heads-up displays, that's going to interfere with what we look at outside, and what, it's going to create this overlay, this boundary that isn't real. This extrapolation of data for the sake of data and information removes us organically from real life, from that which gives life. Machines can't give life. They might be able to save a life, on the surgery, on the surgical table, but they cannot give life. And this is where I think a lot of people are seduced, and I have to look at my own seductions, my own addictions, to the feeling of like, I can't do this or that or the other without this technology. And that is patently false. That is patently untrue. What makes it even more maddening is that when you find yourself being herded and directed by the demands of what has been created over the last 20 years, to be able to function in this life isn't something you chose. It's not something I chose. It just happens to be what it is. Now, there will be saying, well, don't make it wrong. It's part of spirit. It's part of universal consciousness and so forth and so on. Yes, but how are we using it? And how is it being applied in a way that is actually beneficial for everybody instead of being benefit to a very, very small number of people who have a certain agenda and ideology around certain outcomes that they expect to get from this? So it is not by consent or common consensus that any of this is happening, the way the world being the way it is over the last 20 years, isn't something that I envisioned 45, 50 years ago. I don't think any of you sitting here listening to this envisioned us to be in the place that we are in right now, where we have to be feeling as if we have to make a choice between our soul and the continued existence of the soul instead of it becoming a set of digital files in a computer somewhere, or an existence on a planet that really nature fades into the background. In fact, we stop caring for it, it'll stop caring for us. So if we don't have this dialogue now, if we don't have this discussion or debate or investigation and research now, then when? When it's basically too late, when entropy has already set in 20 years from now, because we have been unable to come to some sort of living organic relationship with our surroundings and with the intelligence that's already behind it. We don't need a smart planet, because that basically means that we are creating for ourselves, either by choice or by default, a real matrix. You know, just like the you know, you basically only have a sense of your residual digital identity anymore. There is no organic, there is no breath, there is no respiration as such. So all the air, here's going back to this electrification of the air. Every breath that you take right now is charged with electrified particles. This didn't exist 150 years ago. It didn't even exist since the 1920s. So do you think this might have some kind of effect in creating ill health, mental illness, emotional dysfunctions? I'd say it'd have a big part in it, in the creation of pandemics, distortions in the natural genetic sequencing of human beings and other species. And then you get mutations and aberrations within, and anomalies within the genetics and within the proteins. Nobody has really questioned in the process of what we've been ramping up to for the last 30, 40 years, whether it's healthy. It just goes on at a breakneck speed. Somebody rolls out something else and it's like, yeah, everybody's standing in a line at the Apple store looking for the iPhone 11 or 12 or 14. That isn't the golden age I envision for us. Computers in service to us, as I mentioned briefly on Tuesday, could actually relieve us of all sorts of drudgery and remove from us the need to provide for ourselves in the way that we did 10,000, 20,000 years ago, you know, going out hunting and foraging. But in a way, it could actually free us up to have a deeper connection and deeper reverence for the natural world and the cosmos. And in turn, if we are seeing that reverence in ourselves for what we observe and see through the eyes of the soul, then we have to have it for each other. That's just an automatic. You wouldn't attack any part of the natural world because it would be an attack on yourself. It's really important to look at this, because this is exactly what this year is about and the whole decade is about. It's not about just racial justice. It's not about economic opportunity or a basic income for everybody. Here's a good example. This dawned on me just about a week ago. For years, I was against cryptocurrency. There was just something instinctual in me that said, it's not right. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I can't feel that it's for me or that it's a solution. It feels more like a distraction. I got involved with something last fall that is definitely strongly invested in the idea of blockchain and cryptocurrency. I'm not going to mention any names. I'm not going to describe the process or the financial model it's basing itself on. But the deeper I look into crypto, the deeper I look into the idea of crypto just from a financial standpoint, when you stop and think about it, the only value crypto has is because it's based on what? Money as we know it. Money as we know it. Sorry for the vibration on the desk. Money as we know it. So is it really independent from the current monetary system? Not at all. Because all of its valuation is tied to that existing system, which is controlled by central banks and governments. So how is it free? How is it different? Even if it was backed by precious metals, its value is pegged to the dollar, to the pound, to the euro, to the rupee, whatever. So when you understand that just from a pure logical standpoint, you just go, wait, it's not a replacement. It's an extension. It's a digital extension of what already exists. Now, I have very strong feelings after having revisited that or had that idea come that crypto is actually another form of seduction from AI. AI didn't invent it directly, artificial intelligence. Blockchains, by the way, they're not secure and they're not anonymous. I don't care what anybody tells you. That transactions are all trackable. Blockchains may be secure to a certain point, more secure than others, encrypted and so forth, but there is not a government intelligence agency that could not probably break into one if they really wanted to. Extrapolate data, financial transactions, and so forth. But there's a deeper reason I probably won't follow the rabbit down that hole, and that is primarily because of it then forcing me or luring me or changing my behavior in such a way where I have to engage with it through wireless technologies in multiple levels of encryption, dealing with all of the transactional processes, is basically overlaying another set of tasks on an already full life. Do I really want to do that? And as a result, we see more and more people buckling under the stress of the hamster on a wheel syndrome. This is why the mental issues, this is why the emotional issues. It's not just having the situation where we can't have any physical one-to-one contact with each other, but that is a big part. It's a huge part. But it's also this sense that there is an inevitability to us being forced forward in this particular direction, and there is no getting off of this track, left or right, unless you're incredibly skilled in how to survive in the wild, and you can build your own house and grow your own food and dig your own well, then more power to you, you can do that. But we have been so separated from nature for the last 150 to 450 years. We've been creating all these different barriers or walls between us and the natural world that we don't know how to do that without going to some kind of seminar out in the wild with some mountain man to show us all that stuff. How to forage for food, how to build a lean-to, how to survive in a storm. None of us know those skills. We have forgotten them. But the biggest skill we are forgetting is our own soul and our connection to what is basically the real path to human transcendent experience. And that's what this message is about. We have a choice point. You have to decide. There is no sitting on a fence and saying it's all good. It may be that there's no positive or negative, right or wrong, but there is certainly positive and negative, otherwise we wouldn't be experiencing anything. You'd be just inert, dead consciousness. Maybe conscious, maybe very, very minimal level of consciousness. Everything is still in motion all the time. At some point, it gets very, very slow in the place of the absolute, but it's still there. And this is the thing. Do we want to know that absolute at a personal, real level? Or are we going to substitute a digital counterfeit for it? All right? And I think I can't go any further than that at this time. The choice is, are we willing to really do the work and desire to understand our relationship to a greater reality, a higher dimension, if that suits your model, a relationship with the source that gave us life, both the planetary source and the cosmic source? Or are we willing to accept a digital counterfeit? So that's the choice point. That's the choice point for this year and every year of this decade. But I think the space and the fertility, the place of fertility for this discussion, this self-examination, is now and possibly most of next year. And beyond that, I don't know. When Pluto arrives, when Pluto return arrives at the USA natal Pluto position in 2022, 2023, it's going to make this year look easy by comparison. That's not for fear. That's not, I'm trying to, ramp up the fear level here. This is just looking at what is so. What are the potentials? But we have a lot of work we could do between now and then that would mitigate or soften any of the disruptions that birthing pangs will occur. Certainly, they will occur in some way, shape, or form at some level of intensity. But we have a choice of how we are going to navigate that. We are always a choice how we want to create the experience we want to have to create. And those things we cannot control, you have the choice of controlling, or should we say, experiencing your response to it, either positive or negative. But there is no neutral. We're not dealing with absolutes here. It's a both and. We are being and doing creatures, but we are also in a relative world as well as coming from a place and embedded in our souls and in the spark of our divinity, a place of the absolute. Absolute love, absolute fulfillment of every need, absolute compassion, absolute wisdom. All of it's there all the time. And you have to act as if you already have it. That there is no distance between you and God, or you and Goddess. You're already it. You're already there. It's a matter of remembering it. It's a matter of getting things out of the way that are in the way. That's what the whole issue of the digital overlay is about, is it keeps putting layers in front of us, keeps pushing us further and further away from Source. Okay, this is not a fantasy. This is exactly what I've been seeing happen since my Kundalini awakening in 1994. The more we seem to be thinking that things are changing, the more they seem to be solidifying or crystallizing in a way that really doesn't fit our vision of a harmonious, compassionate, empathic, cooperative experience on this planet, i.e. returning Earth to heaven, if you will. So that may be my opinion. But look around, observe, take the information that feels right to you from this conversation, from this broadcast, and throw the rest out the window if it doesn't feel like truth to you. This is something I need to lead with every time. What you hear is not exactly what I'm saying, and vice versa. You cannot sit there and say, okay, everything is perfect. No, but maybe it's not helpful. Maybe you can make a difference. You can make something better for yourself, certainly first, and then for other people who are lost and who are suffering mentally, emotionally, physically, economically even. So I think this is where it comes into play, where you understand what the phrases were from 2,000 years ago. As you do it unto the least of me, you do it unto the least of these, you do it unto me. There is no difference here, okay? So I'm going to avoid getting preachy. All right. Sense of humor does keep us moving through all this. So to find every opportunity to laugh and find the absurdity the absurdity that can be seen in some of the aspects of what's happening. Especially politicians. They've been quite a source of humor lately. Entertainment, anyway. So it's important to keep one's perspective and realize that, you know, Spirit's rooting for the best outcome, and there is only one outcome, and it is the best. But we are not going to have it handed to us during this time and in the times to come. We're going to have to work for it. We're going to have to want it so much that we are willing to let go of what isn't working and what isn't real and what doesn't bring us closer to that harmonious and direct contact with Source within and Source without. Okay? So that's my job done for this week. I will see you next Tuesday, unless barring something else happening. And we will cover some other ground in a few other areas, and I hope that you have gotten something from this. So if you have any comments you'd like to make or have any questions of me, please put them in the comments section or PM me or contact me, isaac@isaacgeorge.com. And if you're here in the UK, you can call me direct, 07504 822 688. And see if you need anything, just let me know. We can work together. All right? Thanks for tuning in. Another edition, edition 11 on the 11th of June. And look forward to seeing you later. Hopefully next week. In the meantime, don't forget, you have a coffee to enjoy. Take care. Love you all. Blessings on you.